Welcome back to another explainer. Right now, we're totally transforming how we think about success in complex projects, specifically when it comes to the built environment. We're talking about architecture, engineering, construction, tech. These are massive, complex spaces where teams of highly skilled people literally collide every day. So, we're going to fundamentally challenge the old ways of collaborating, and we'll be looking at an incredibly powerful new framework that can genuinely change everything about how we work together.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here's a quick map of our territory today. First, we're looking at why projects actually fail. Then, we'll talk about getting trapped in the gray diamond. After that, we'll rethink social maturity, look at the shift to adaptability, and finally, we'll wrap up by embracing the red diamond.
So, Section 1. Why projects actually fail.
When a massive project goes completely off the rails, I feel like our first instinct is always to blame the technical side, right? We blame the software, the math, the supply chain, or maybe those budget algorithms. But honestly, the data tells a totally different story. I want you to think about the absolute biggest hurdles you've faced in your own professional life. Seriously, think back. When a deadline was missed or a project just crumbled, was it really a software glitch that caused the ultimate breakdown? Or was it something entirely human?
Well, it's almost always a breakdown in human connection. We're talking about miscommunication, silo thinking, defensiveness, territorial behavior, and just a stubborn resistance to change. The built environment is deeply, inherently collaborative by nature. You've got architects, engineers, contractors, clients, facility managers, all trying to integrate into these incredibly complex systems. Projects don't fail because we lack technical competence. Not at all. They struggle because of this human friction. The technology is absolutely there, but we have to somehow overcome ourselves to actually use it effectively. Which brings us to Section 2, Trapped in the Gray Diamond.
So, what actually happens when those negative human behaviors, like the defensiveness and the siloed thinking, become a permanent culture? Well, we get trapped in a very specific kind of systemic gridlock, and this brilliantly illustrates that trap. This is the gray diamond. It is literally a system of pure stagnation. If you look closely at the four outer points holding this rigid structure in place, it's kind of bleak. We have anxiety in our politics at the top, avoidance in our economics on the right, accusation in our physical environment at the bottom, and apathy in our social spheres on the left. Inside the diamond, sure, teams are still going through the motions. They're defining tasks, planning, implementing, reflecting, but they are completely weighed down by these heavy static nodes. Organizations just get stuck in this loop, repeating the exact same conflicts, the exact same mistakes, and the same inefficiencies over and over again.
And that brings us to a fundamental clash of structures. On one hand, we've got pyramid thinking. Now, pyramids are totally top-down. They're anchored in tradition, strict ideology, and really fixed roles. Basically, they divide us into opposing camps and just protect old hierarchies. But on the other side, we have diamond thinking. This is adaptive, it's responsive to real needs, and it absolutely thrives on collective learning. To escape the stagnation of that gray diamond we just looked at, we can't just climb a traditional pyramid. We have to fundamentally shift our minds to an open, evolving framework.
Moving on to Section 3, Rethinking Social Maturity.
So how do we actually make that leap? How do we break out of the gray diamond and ditch pyramid thinking for good? Well, it requires a pretty vital upgrade. The cure to all this systemic stagnation is social maturity. Simply put, it's the ability to move beyond your ego, beyond ideology and fixed positions, so we can focus entirely on shared outcomes. When you have high social maturity, you aren't trying to protect your little territory or clinging to some fixed role. Instead, you're empowered to actively listen, to learn, adapt, and collaborate effectively across totally different disciplines. You're putting the project's success way above your own ego.
Let's move to and see how this builds upon relational intelligence, because working hand in hand with social maturity is your capacity to build productive relationships, navigate completely differing perspectives, and create genuine trust within your teams. Together, these two concepts, social maturity and relational intelligence, they unlock a completely new way of working. Without them, you're kind of just trapped in the past, but with them, you create the absolutely essential conditions for evolution.
All right, Section 4, the shift to adaptability.
Now that we have the tools, the social maturity and the relational intelligence, how does the actual transformation happen in practice? Well, just look at this massive paradigm shift. On the left, we've got the heavy, stagnant gray diamond we discussed earlier. But as we start applying social maturity, we shift over to the right. Boom, the red diamond. It's dynamic, it's brilliant, and it feels completely alive. Let me be clear, this isn't just tweaking a workflow or updating a spreadsheet. This is a massive, fundamental, evolutionary leap in how we approach the built environment.
And this specific evolutionary journey happens in 4 very distinct, actionable steps. First, we question. Second, we learn. Third, we adapt. And fourth, we evolve. It all starts when curiosity breaks the cycle. You literally have to stop and ask, wait, why are we actually doing it this way? Then, real learning builds upon that curiosity. Next, adaptation steps in and transforms those learnings into entirely new behaviors. And finally, evolution emerges. And honestly, evolution truly begins when adaptation isn't just some special one-off initiative, but when it just becomes the normal, everyday culture of your organization.
Which brings us to our final section, Section 5, Embracing the Red Diamond.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is looking at what it means to actually operate in this highly evolved state. Notice how the outer pressures have completely flipped to support us rather than, crush us. Instead of anxiety and apathy, look at the 4 corners now. We have awareness and vision at the top, anticipation and exchange over on the right, context, accountability, and abundance down at the base, and adaptability driving us to evolve on the left. The internal project phases, like the planning, the implementation, assessment, sure, they're still there, but the energy surrounding them is entirely different. In the Red Diamond, continuous learning is actively fostered. Collaboration doesn't feel forced or like a chore, it just becomes natural.
And this brings us to a pretty stark contrast in how we choose to build our world. On the dark, cracked landscape on the left side, people are trapped in inherited thinking. We're talking tribalism, echo chambers, groupthink. But right in the middle, the social sphere is where the very first break becomes possible. By choosing to question and connect, we shatter that gray structure and step right into the vibrant, illuminated red space on the right. This is where real learning, real collaboration, innovation, and inclusion actually happen. Politics and economics, they can constantly change around us, but societies and projects truly evolve only when people make the active choice to connect. So, the crucial point is this. We absolutely must stop asking who is to blame, and instead, we need to start asking, what does this moment require? The future isn't just something that passively happens to us, it's something we build together through open dialogue and shared responsibility. Honestly, if you're still looking around for someone to blame, you are stuck in the gray diamond. So I'm going to leave you with this. Are you ready to stop living in the past and start building a dynamic, resilient future? What does your next moment require?